Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Droodles Blitz, and in today's video, I'll be ranking each and every tier 10 in Blitz. It's 2025. It's a new year, and I figured I should make a new tier list for anybody that wants to know where these tanks rank amongst their peers. So, if you enjoy this type of content, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to memorize all the stats in the game so that you can have the best idea of how to use these vehicles. Starting off, we have the WZ114 SP2. This is a tier 10 Chinese collector heavy. It's one that started off rather mediocre due to the fact that it really didn't have anything good about it. The 60 TP was basically just a flat better variant of the vehicle. But Wargaming has buffed the tank now to a point where it actually has really strong turret armor, enough that you're going to get a lot of bounces when using it hull down. It has very good alpha at 620, and not only that, the vehicle has pretty good heat pen. It's got AP standard, unlike the 60 TP. Still has some downsides, but overall, it's a decent heavy. I'm definitely going to put it into the strong category now. Any tank that has good turret armor, 7 degrees of gun depression, and pretty good alpha is always going to be a decent tank. I don't think there's anything particularly amazing about the 114, but yeah, I'll definitely put it into the strong category. The WZ116F3 is definitely one of the worst tier 10s that Wargaming has put into the game. The vehicle is okay on mobility. It goes like 42, but its power to weight is pretty poor. The alpha damage is great. 490 allows you to outtrade most other tier 10 heavies. Unfortunately, the track wheels are incredibly weak, the armor on the hull is pretty poor, and the turret armor isn't a whole lot better. The 116's gun has good pen, but unfortunately it's one of the least accurate guns in tier 10, making it a rather unfun tier 10 to play. It's definitely going to go into the workable category. I've had some decent games in the tank, but I've also had some games that have been very unenjoyable, and I really just can't say anything particularly special about the 116, so it's definitely going into the workable category. If Wargaming were to buff its turret armor, or maybe buff its traverse speed, its side armor, there's a lot of buffs they could do. Make the gun more accurate, or all three, it might become a pretty solid vehicle. But right now, it's really mid. The BZ75 has two gun options. You have a 130mm and a 152mm. With the 152mm, I'm going to be putting the vehicle into the strong category, and same for the 130mm. Both gun options are solid. I don't think that there's anything particularly super strong about the BZ75. It has 8 degrees of gun depression, which allows it to work a ridgeline pretty well. It's got decent mobility, but at the end of the day, the gun doesn't have premium ammo unless you're firing the lower alpha gun, but I'm not running that. So if you're running the actual gun you're supposed to on the tank, which is the derp gun, you don't have the ability to really cut through heavily armored tanks, which obviously can bite you in the rear end. It's also not super accurate. If you're running the 130, yeah, it's actually a pretty solid tank, but you don't have much turret armor, and at that point just drive a WZ111-5A. The vehicle definitely has some strengths, but even though it's one of my favorite tier 10s, it still is definitely limited by some of its capabilities. But very strong. I enjoy it a lot, and I think it's a really, really capable tier 10. The WZ111-5A is an interesting one. It's got mobility, it's got 7 degrees of gun depression, solid turret armor, great DPM, and pretty good accuracy. The only problem with the 5A is that it has poor premium pen, but that's really it. And to be entirely honest, now that there is the calibrated shells buff, I'm actually going to be putting the 5A into the super strong category. I've been playing the tank a lot over the past couple of months, and I've really been surprised with how well it's been putting out. Like, I know a lot of people always say, like, I love the 5A and it's a meme because of that, but in all serious notes, like, it's a very solid tank. Any vehicle that has mobility, DPM, and gun depression, it's the trifecta. It really is. And the 5A, in a good player's hands, is really strong. In an average player's hands, yeah, I'd probably put it more down to like the strong to average category, but I'm not an average player, and my tier lists are for people that understand how to use the tanks, so that's how I should put it. The WZ113 also going to go into super strong. The vehicle features a crazy good gun. It has 390mm of premium penetration, which is ridiculous. Not only that, but it has 360 damage on the gold instead of 340, which is normal. You know, if you fire premium shells in a T10's, your alpha is 340. In this tank, it's 360, which allows you to outtrade a lot of other vehicles which may be firing gold. And judging that you have so much pen, you also just don't bounce. The tank has really solid DPM at 3000. It's got great mobility, just like the 5A, and solid turret armor. It's a great tank. The only problem I have with the 5A, or not the 5A, the 113, is that It's a mid-turreted tank, which means that it's very awkward to poke corners or side scrape. It's not graded either, so it's kind of goofy in that regard. Its armor is also not fantastic, but it's a solid tank in most situations, and the turret armor paired with the level of DPM, mobility, and pen the thing has is really good. I honestly think the 113 is fantastic. The 113 GFT I'm still unironically putting in the OP category. It did get nerfed. It lost reactive armor, and it lost a bit of its traverse speed in the last rebalance. However, the 113 GFT did not lose its armor. It also did not lose DPM or accuracy. So the vehicle actually has more alpha damage now, going from 640 to 650. It has still ridiculously strong armor that most tier 10 heavies cannot reliably pen frontally. And when you pair that with the fact that it's still quite mobile, and the fact that it slaps like a truck, yeah, the WZ is still an overpowered tank. Every time I play the vehicle, it's like an easy 4,000 to 5,000 damage game. The tank should not feature the level of mobility, armor, and accuracy it does. Personally, I think that it just needs about a 10mm upper plate nerf, and it would allow it so that heavies can now at least somewhat cut through you if you're not fully hull down, which would make sense to me. But yeah, I mean, the way Wargaming wants that thing to be balanced is basically a brick that you can't pen. It's a little ridiculous. The WZ-121 is a tier 10 Chinese medium, and the 121 is a fantastic tank, definitely in the super strong category. The vehicle features great mobility, top speed of 56. It has reactive armor. It has tungsten. It has 420 damage per shot with great levels of DPM. It has super strong hull and turret armor. And when you pair all of that with one of the best aiming times in the game, it is kind of a crazy fun vehicle. I've always loved the 121, and when Wargaming buffed Calibrated, allowing this vehicle to have heat pen now able to cut through most tier 10 heavies, it does feel absolutely fantastic to just mess around with the 121. The only problem you're going to have to run into with the vehicle is the ammo rack and the fuel tank, because it's a Chinese vehicle, and for some reason Chinese tanks are some of the weakest modules in tier 10. But to fix that, I just run Protective Kit instead of Improved Fuel, and it usually gets the job done. In general, the 121's a beast, so definitely a tank I would consider running. The 121B is similar in name, different in playstyle. The 121B features some very strong capabilities, and once again, we'll be making it into the super strong category. First of all, it has adaptive concealment, meaning that you can see who spotted you, and you get unspotted 3 seconds faster. That alone is a huge mechanic. Not only that, the 121B has 350 damage per shot, putting it right in between something like a 62A and, you know, a Leopard, which is fantastic. The vehicle has really solid DPM. Its armor on the hull is actually almost as strong as a 62A, allowing it to get some really good bounces. And when you pair all of that with the solid turret armor and pretty good mobility, the 121B is just a fantastic tier 10. It definitely has some downsides, but I think every tier 10 does. I think it's a great tank, though, and one that I really enjoy playing in. The WZ-132-1 is a challenging tank for me to rank, because I think in terms of its view range and spotting mechanics, it's almost in the overpowered category. But I think for the sake of today's video, because of how hard it is to drive for most players, I'm going to put it into the super strong category. The WZ-132-1 has been a troubled vehicle. Throughout the years, it's been a tank that was originally really mediocre and then slowly got better and better to a point now where it's incredible. The vehicle has some of the highest pen for a light tank. It has really good mobility. It has gear oil, allowing it to reverse at a ridiculous rate of speed, and it has adaptive concealment just like the 121B. The difference is it's a light tank, so it has the same camo while on the move as sitting still. It also has the most view range in tier 10 right now, but at least it's understandable that the 132-1 has the most view range, because it is a vehicle that is limited by its armor and gun depression. It is an incredibly strong vehicle, and it's one that if you drive, especially if you're a skilled player, you can easily dominate the game in. So yeah, I'm going to be putting it into the super strong category. The 60 TP will always be the super strong category. I'm not sure if I want to put it in OP or super strong. I mean, the thing's kind of got it all. It's got gun depression, mobility, it has alpha, it has tungsten, gear oil. I'm going to put it in the super strong now. I mean, it really is super strong. I think in certain circumstances it's OP, but it is a heavy at the end of the day. And right now heavies are kind of at their weakest due to the fact mediums are dominating the meta, especially auto-loading mediums. The 60 TP, as I mentioned, though, it's got 630 damage per shot, which is crazy high. It has tungsten, meaning that you can roll on average over 700 when you activate it. The vehicle has gear oil, allowing it to reverse at like 18 to 17 kilometers per hour. The vehicle also has 7 degrees of gun depression, a super strong hull, and a nearly impervious turret apart from the small hatch on the roof. It really is one of the hardest vehicles to deal with, and a decent 60 TP driver is something that you should be scared of. And yeah, definitely going into the super strong category. The Carro 45-ton will always be in the OP category as long as it has a 4-shell 380 alpha gun. Yeah, Wargaming kind of nerfed the vehicle a bit, but it also kind of got big buffs. See, a lot of people look at the Carro's turret armor nerf and the mobility nerf as a hurt full portion of the vehicle's capabilities. But in reality, they nerfed those mechanics, but then gave the vehicle gear oil, so now the Carro can reverse at 26 kilometers per hour and also drive at a faster rate of speed. If you're running gear oil and improved fuel like I am, even though the Carro did lose its original mobility, you actually go faster because of the gear oil and improved fuel. So basically, the Carro's only nerf was a little bit less gun depression and slightly less turret armor, but that really doesn't hurt the tank now that you're more mobile, and you still feature a gun which has 380 damage per shot with the ability to shoot 3 shells and 4 if you need to. 3 shells of 380 is just shy of 1200, which is kind of wild. It's like 1120. And not only that, but you also have an additional shell which, again, can literally deal 1,500 damage. I mean, that's crazy. 1,500 damage in a medium in just 10 seconds. That means, pretend you're up against a lion, right? And you shoot that lion once. Well, now that lion is now a potential one clip for you if it ever decides to rush you. Yeah, the Carro's insane, and that's why it's making it into the OP category. The CS63 is, I'm going to put it in the strong. CS63 is definitely a capable vehicle now. It used to be like in the average to workable category. But now after the fact, Wargaming has finally listened to us and buffed the tank, which is what it needed. It's actually a balanced tank. It's really fun to drive. It's got solid DPM, decent accuracy, great mobility with gear oil. It's got rather troll armor, which is fun. And it's actually what I think Wargaming should strive for in terms of balance. It's a fun tank to drive, there's nothing overpowered about it, and in a good player's hands it can be incredibly influential. And that's how I hope most mediums are. Unfortunately, it's not. Most of the mediums, as you'll see, are going to make it into the higher up categories, which is a little unfortunate. Now, the CS63's only real downside is the fact that it doesn't have much armor, and, well, the Leopard one exists, which when we break into, you'll see where I put that tank. But yeah, the CS63, it's a really fun tank. It has adaptive concealment, which allows you to outspot your enemies. In general, it is one of the better tier 10s, and I actually really enjoy playing in it. The Kranvagn, I mean, it's not even a doubt in my mind. It goes into the overpowered category. For many years, people complained that the one downside of the Kranvagn was the poor DPM. It had like 2200, but the poor DPM is what balanced out the vehicle. Well, now the Kranvagn doesn't have poor DPM. Now it has 2700 effective damage per minute if you shoot it on single shot, with also 9 degrees of gun depression, a turret that you literally cannot penetrate, and decent mobility due to the fact you have super speed boost. It reverses at 18 for Pete's sake, and it doesn't even need gear oil. The Kranvagn is by far one of the more overpowered tier 10s in the game. Anytime I drive the tank, it's an easy 3,000 to 4,000 damage battle, and it shows you just how overpowered some of the tier 10s are versus the others. It's always funny to me how people complain premiums and collectors are the most OP tanks, when, as we can see so far, most of the vehicles in the super strong to OP category are tech trees, and you're probably going to see a continuing trend in that video. Next up, we have the Minotauro, which is a tier 10 Italian auto-reloading tank destroyer, and the Mino's a tricky one. It's definitely close to the OP category for me. The vehicle features 490 damage per shot. It has 10 degrees of gun depression, solid DPM, and even pretty good mobility. But I do think the tank is not OP due to the fact that for most players it's a very easy counter, so I'll put it into the super strong category. I do think the Minnow is an incredibly strong vehicle. I mean, it's very hard to counter. It really is. And now that Wargaming has buffed its DPM to around 2,500, I mean, sure, it's not good for, like, tank destroyers. It's the lowest DPM for a tank destroyer, but the Minnow is not a tank destroyer. It's a heavy. If you're playing it like a tank destroyer, you're playing it wrong. It's a frontline heavy. It has more armor and more effective capabilities than 90% of heavies. So because of that, it's a ridiculously capable tank, and it's really good. But again, the medium meta definitely puts a bit of a hurt on the Minnow, which is why I don't think it's in the OP category. The Progetto 65, definitely super strong as well. The DPM on the vehicle, it was hurt a bit. You lose damage per minute now when you dump the clip instead of gaining, but I'm completely fine with that. That's how autoloaders should be, or auto reloaders is what I should be saying. The Progetto features stupid troll upper plate armor, which you literally cannot pen. Even in a 183, you're not going to pen that upper plate. Not only that, but the Progetto also features very troll turret armor. Because of the way it's angled, sometimes you'll just hit one of the little edges of the turret and it'll bounce right off. I hate shooting at Progettos. It's very cringe. Not only that, but the Progetto features a super dangerous gun with 350 damage per shot. It has a 3-second nitro clip and can deal 1,050 damage in just 6 seconds of shooting. When you pair that with the fact that it has really good armor, solid mobility, and great gun depression, the Progetto is kind of a jack of all trades. Definitely has some downsides, but I mean, I can easily deal with those downsides with a clip of how dangerous it is. Not as good as the Carro, but definitely a really, really capable tank. The Lion is also going to be... The Lion's a tricky one. I'm tempted to put it into the OP category because of the tungsten and capabilities it features, but I'm going to put it into the super strong category. I think that's where it deserves to be. The Lion is incredibly capable. It's kind of like a Rinoceronte turned into a medium, and that's great. I mean, it's basically got a double shotgun with high levels of DPM and tungsten. And the tungsten on an auto reloader is insane because you have 3 shells. I mean, sure, you're only supposed to shoot 2, but if I'm in a situation where I see a 1200 HP vehicle, I can load in my tungsten and absolutely annihilate. And it's not just that, the Lion has really good HE alpha of like 440, meaning that if I get the rear of an enemy tank, I can put on that tungsten and I can roll literally like 480 alpha. It's insane. So the Lion definitely has some super, super good strengths in that area. It also has great gun depression, solid mobility, not great mobility, but it's good enough to work most situations, and its armor is rather troll on the turret. In general, the Lion is it's a super, super strong vehicle, and one that I really enjoy playing, so definitely how I would rank it. The Rinoceronte, I'm going to be putting into OP. Originally, I thought it was super strong, because kind of seems super strong, right? The vehicle featured solid mobility, 7 degrees of gun depression, a solid gun with 2600 DPM, 420 alpha, and it's a double shot. But the more I've played the Rinoceronte, the more I've gone up against it, the more I've asked Flossie's opinion and Peter's opinion, the more I've realized that it kind of is an overpowered tank. The problem with the Rhino, in my opinion, is the fact that it has everything. It has gun depression, it has turret armor, it has solid penetration, it has solid accuracy. Even after the accuracy nerf, it's still solid. The DPM is great. The alpha damage on single shot's great. Everything about the vehicle is great. And when you have a vehicle that accomplishes everything with really no downsides, then it's going to be an OP tank. If you want my opinion, I think the Rhino should have a small turret armor nerf to a point where you can penetrate the vehicle at least somewhat reliably when it's using gun depression. Right now, the Rhino has a turret which is just strong enough that most tier 10 heavies and mediums will never pen it when using gun depression, which is very annoying because you're up against a vehicle which can beat you on a ridgeline due to its double shot mechanic, has more mobility than you, so it'll get there faster, and then it'll just bully you off the ridgeline. I do think the Rhino needs a slight nerf. It's obviously not as capable as a Kron, but it's definitely better in terms of mobility and flexibility. So yeah, it's a really strong tank and definitely one that I fear going up against in a decent player's hands. The Strv K, I'm gonna put it into the strong category. While it doesn't have anything crazy going for it, it still does have the most DPM for a tier 10 tank destroyer, or heavy. I think if it's not the most, it's the second most. It's right up there next to the T95E6. It has decent mobility, it has 10 degrees of gun depression, and pretty good turret armor. Overall, it's a strong tank. Like, even though it is definitely down, it's not out. And it's definitely not out by a large margin. I can still do very well in a Strv. I think it's a pretty fun tank to drive. It's just unfortunate that the vehicle lost so much DPM. I think it should have kept the original damage per minute it had and stayed the way it was. Maybe lost a little bit of its speed boost, but apart from that, it's always been a very fun tank. It's just a little unfortunate the vehicle's not great anymore in terms of its capabilities. The TVP 5051, tricky take for me to rate. The TVP obviously features incredible levels of dumping potential. It does 1240 damage in a matter of 5.85 seconds or whatever, 6.8 seconds. It also features 8 degrees of gun depression, really troll hull armor, and really good mobility. And with the refined gun buff, it really helps the TVP due to its crazy good on-movement dispersion. It's got really good pen because of the calibrated shells buff. The only real downside is the poor levels of damage per minute. But, yeah, I still have to put the TVP into the overpowered category. It's always been in the overpowered category for me because of what it has. And, I mean, the thing's insane. It really is. It's got it all. It's a super, super scary vehicle. So, yeah, it's going to go into the OP category. And I think you can understand why. The VZ55, I'll put in the super strong. While it is a really, really capable tank, I don't think it makes it into the OP, but it's definitely super strong. It features an autoloader now, which can deal 450 damage, or no, it's 460. 460 damage in quick succession, which means I think it's a 4-second interclip, so you deal, 920 damage in 4 seconds? That's really good. It also has solid mobility, 7 degrees of gun depression, and pretty good turret armor. The only problem with the VZ is that its hull armor is still very mediocre, the track wheels are super weak, the lower plate's incredibly weak, and it does have some weak spots on the hatch. But it's not really a downside, it's just why it doesn't make it into the OP category. I think the Rhino is a slightly better VZ. But in terms of capabilities, the VZ has 2700 DPM as an autoloader that's insane. It is an incredibly capable tank and definitely one that I would consider to get your hands on. It is just such a good tier 10. What a beast. The Bosch-Ation has two guns. You have the 105mm and the 100mm. The 100mm on the Bosch-Ation definitely makes it into the OP category. It has 3,200 effective damage per minute. The vehicle still features crazy good levels of accuracy, DPM, penetration is great too. And it has still the second most view range in tier 10. When you give a vehicle, especially an autoloader, 3,200 DPM, insane mobility, troll armor, and a gun that just keeps shooting and shooting and shooting, I'm going to put it into the OP category. It kind of takes like the TVP and then puts it up a next level on steroids. It's a little ridiculous. The 105mm I'll put into super strong. It is good. The only problem I have with the 105mm is that its penetration is not great. It fires APCR standard, which I do not like, and it has way less DPM than the 100mm. So definitely a bit worse in my personal opinion in terms of its capabilities, but it's still a very good gun, and if you want to use it, it's not a bad shout at all. The AMX 30B it's a strong tank, but I'm going to put it into the average category for now. It's kind of just mediocre, and that's why the 30B is average. I mean, average does not mean bad. Average means if I'm up against enemies, I am going to be sitting at a pretty meh experience, you know? Nothing's going to be ideally amazing, but it's not going to be bad either. I'm just living life the way it is, where, you know, if I'm driving a tank that's strong and above, then I'm actually able to usually confidently beat other tanks that I'm up against. But with the 30B, you know, you definitely have to put in a bit of an extra fight to go up against these vehicles in the super strong category. And that's kind of how I rate the vehicle. It's all right. I mean, it still has decent DPM. It still has good mobility and gun depression. And it's just unfortunate Wargaming nerfed the DPM. It was such an enjoyable tank, and they said, nope, we're going to take away the DPM. So, oh well. I enjoyed the 30B, but definitely not the best tank anymore. The AMX 50B, yeah, it's an autoloader, guys. It's an autoloader that features 3,000 DPM, has really good penetration, stupid good accuracy, and reactive. If it didn't have reactive armor, it would be in super strong to strong. But for some reason, Wargaming said, let's give a vehicle which YOLOs the ability to YOLO even harder with reactive, which makes no sense. You can literally poke a Jagdpanzer E100, use your reactive armor, take its average damage of 800 down to 600, and then get shot for 600, shoot it back for 1500 and back into cover. How does that make any sense? And the craziest part is that you don't even reload that much longer than a YAG because you have 3,000 DPM. The vehicle is insane. It really is. The 50B is a stupid tank. Like, yeah, it's a tricky one to drive, but I definitely think in a decent player's hands, it's a bit ridiculous. And this is kind of the problem we have with World of Tanks Blitz now, is it seems like a lot of the vehicles are in the OP category. You know, a lot of you might say in the comments, and I see this all the time, oh, you have to lower it. Your OP category should be strong. Your strong category should be good. Your good category should be average. And maybe that's how you want to rank them. But in reality, the reason why we're having so many turbo battles right now is because this is the reality of how the balancing is. This is the reality of Blitz. The reality is that because all of the vehicles are now OP to super strong, you're getting into a circumstance where teams are just dying immediately because every tank has the ability to nuke every other tank in the first 20 seconds of the battle. That is why we're having so many turbo games. If I were to put every tank into the average to strong category, we would be sitting in a situation right now where the game would feel a lot more lax and balanced because games would not be ending immediately. If every tank played like a 30B, a 116 F3, and a BZ75, we would be sitting here with battles that average 3 to 4 minutes on average. But in reality, we're sitting at battles that average 2 minutes. Sometimes they last even less than 2 minutes before the deciding factor of the game is underwent. And because of that, it's because of these vehicles in the super strong to OP category, which makes such a large impact in the game in the early short games that it just defeats the purpose of a lot of the other takes. And that is why we have differentiation between OP super strong and strong, average, and workable. If you disagree, I'm not sure what to say, but at the end of the day, these are my opinions, and if you disagree, then that's your opinions. Next up, we have the Foch 155, which has the AC SA58 Mod 2 and the AC SA58. The 58 without the Mod 2 is the single shot, and the Mod 2 is the double shot. The Foch Autoloader is definitely OP. It has super speed boost, it has gear oil, it has 3000 plus DPM, it has 560 damage per shot with tungsten, which means you can deal a 1300 damage clip, and it got an armor buff. The thing is ridiculous. Yes, I know people type in the comments the track wheels are weak, and they are, but that's why I just don't angle the vehicle. I sit dead center on my opponents, and because the armor on the upper plate is so strong, it's still able to get bounces against 90% of mediums loading gold and even most heavies. It's crazy good armor. So yeah, the Foch definitely OP for me. The single shot on the Foch goes into super strong. It's definitely a good gun. It's very capable with its 620 damage per shot. It's got really good DPM. It's definitely got better aiming time than the 155mm autoloader. But at the same time, I really don't think that it's a very good option when you have the other option, which just does so much now. So that's kind of how I see it. AMX M4 MLE54, definitely not OP, but definitely in the super strong category. I'm not going to put it in OP because the gun itself limits its capabilities, but the armor, the mobility, the gun depression, and the DPM as well is great. Like, when the AMX M4 works, it feels like one of the best tier 10s of the game. When it doesn't work, you want to rip your teeth out. But even when it doesn't work, it's still quite the capable tank. I mean, it's got everything. And reactive armor alone on a vehicle with 2,700 health with the mobility and gun depression and armor it has is ridiculous. So, yeah, the AMX M4 is crazy good. It's got 450 damage per shot. It's got really good levels of pen on the heat, 380 mils, and you can't pen it when it's using gun depression. Plus, it reverses at 20 still, allowing it to be crazy good in that mechanic. I definitely think it should have a bit of a mobility nerf on top speed. Maybe instead of 45, it should go 40. Instead of 20 reverse, it should go 15. And it should not have reactive armor. If you do those things and make the gun a bit more accurate, I think it would be more fun to drive, and it would be less capable in terms of mobility, making it a little more fair and in the heavy category. Ooh, E100's interesting. In my previous ranking, the E100 might have been opposite because the 15cm was the only gun that you'd really be running, but now the 12.8 got a big buff. It's definitely an interesting one. The 12.8 on the E100 is going to make me put it into the super strong category. The vehicle features just shy of 3,000 DPM at the 12.8, which is crazy good. And when you pair that with the fact you have 2,900 health, you have solid mobility and everything else, it's a really capable tank. When it comes to the 15cm, it's going to go more into the strong category. It's still dangerous, but it's definitely not nearly as dangerous as the 12.8. And at the end of the day, if I want to run a 15cm E100, I can either drive a BZ75, a 114 SP2, or more realistically, something like a, I'm not even sure. There's so many tanks, but I would probably drive the VK72 over it, or the 60 TP. So that's kind of how I'd go. But 12.8 E100 is really fun. 2800 DPM with 460 alpha really confuses people. Plus, it has really solid standard pen, upwards of 280 mils, meaning that you butter through enemy armor. And with the actually solid mobility for a super heavy, it's surprisingly good. We have the E50M, which definitely makes it into the OP category. The vehicle features reactive armor, crazy good mobility, super high DPM. In general, the E50M is an absolutely crazy good vehicle and definitely one you should be scared of on the battlefield. I mean, I don't really need to break into much of a reason why it's so OP, so yeah, it's got DPM, it's got mobility, it's got stupid armor, and reactive. There you go. OP tank. It has it all. The Grill 15, believe it or not, is going to go into the super strong category. After the Grill has received reactive, or not reactive, spall liner. After the grill receives spall liner, which it's had for a while now, but after it received spall liner, it was always good. But now that it features gear oil, it's finally, like, really good. Not only did it get gear oil, but Wargaming buffed refined gun, and they buffed camo net for tank destroyers. And that alone gave the grill everything it needed. For years, I've been saying the grills needed more camo, and it finally has more camo. And when you pair that with the mobility buffs of gear oil, it allows the grill to reverse into cover faster, and it allows the grill to not get spotted as much. It is a great combination, and it finally allows this tank destroyer to feel like a beast. I didn't used to like driving the grill that much, but I love driving it now, which is crazy, because I never loved campy-style tank destroyers. But the grill, it's just super fun. I absolutely adore it, and I think it's one of my favorite tier 10 tank destroyers now. Definitely super strong. Oh, Waffenträger F1, definitely into the workable category. It is probably the worst tier 10 in the game right now in terms of carrying potential and capabilities. I was very surprised, I was talking to Peter, or I typed in his comment section, I said, I think that this tank is one of the worst tier 10s for late game potential, and he was like, I think it has good late game potential, but I don't know, I really don't think that it has any late game potential. You get outspotted by literally every tier 10, and I'm not joking. I tested it, in a training room with Flossie. Every single tier 10 outspots you. If you're in a bush, you will get spotted at around 130 meters by light tanks and 100 meters by heavies. That is actually ridiculous. It means that no matter what you do, you're going to be outspotted anytime an enemy tank tries to push. And you're always going to be tunneled, and you're always going to be focused. So, yeah, I mean, the gun's dangerous, don't get me wrong, but if your tank sucks, it doesn't matter how dangerous your gun is, because you can't do anything. I would drive a 116 F3 over the Waffenträger, I can tell you that for a fact. So, yeah, it's definitely in the workable category. The Jagdpanzer E100 is also going to be going into either workable or average. I'm going to put it into average. I feel like the Jagdpanzer has more potential than the Waffenträger and the 116 F3, but not a whole lot more. It's definitely a tank which struggles, because while it does have really high alpha, it has tungsten, it has even good armor, at the end of the day, it's limited by its mobility. You're a tank that's huge. You only have tiny better camo values than the Waffenträger, but at least you have armor, but still with very poor camo values, poor mobility, and a gun that has a long reload. It's very easy to catch this vehicle out in the open, especially if your team decides to ditch you. You're stuck in a situation that's just not very fun. So I do really like the Jagdpanzer, but at the same time, it's a tank that very quickly gets overwhelmed, and that's not something that you want in a tier 10. But I'm fine with it being an average. I think the only thing it needs is a little bit more mobility, maybe 35 kilometers per hour, and it'll be great. But right now, it's a little bit too slow. The Kampfpanzer 50-ton, the KPZ 50-ton, I'm going to put into super strong. I mean, it really is. I haven't played it that much, but it's always going to be a super strong tank. When you have 3,600 plus DPM, when you have tungsten, when you have super good mobility, solid armor on the upper plate, and a pretty troll turret, you just kind of have it all. Kampfpanzer is a fantastic vehicle. The only thing that's a little low is the alpha damage at like 320, but who cares? Everything else is amazing. It's such a fun tank to drive, and it's actually surprisingly good at ramming as well. So, yeah, the Kampfpanzer it's a really fun vehicle. Leopard 1, this might surprise some of you, but, well, yeah, it's going to go into the OP category. Why? Well, it's because it's overpowered. I mean, if you're struggling in the Leopard, I'm going to be honest, it's a skill issue, because the Leopard at this point is an OP tank. It has everything. It has mobility, it has gear oil, it has 3,863 DPM, which is entirely overpowered. That's more DPM than a frickin' FV217 Badger, and almost more than an Object 263. Not only that, it has the best accuracy in tier 10, it has the best mobility in tier 10. It has adaptive concealment, allowing you to not only outspot your opponents, know when you're outspotted, but get unspotted 3 seconds faster. Even though its gun depression is anything insane now at 7 degrees, it's still plenty to get the job done. And its armor, sure, it's not good, but, like, it doesn't matter when you have everything else going for you. The Leopard is one of the easiest tanks for a decent player to pull out and average, like, 3,500 to 4K in. It is so stupid. It needs a nerf, in my opinion, a slight DPM nerf. Maybe instead of 3,800 DPM with rammer, it's like 3,600 DPM, and I think it'll be fine. But the fact that we're going to give it gear oil and everything else is just mind-boggling to me. Really allows the vehicle to just dominate the matchmaker, which is not great, at least if you ask my personal opinion. I think that the Leopard is one of the major reasons why we run into turbo battles so often. The mouse, oh man, the mouse, here's the deal. While I personally do not like the mouse that much, it is actually the highest win rate heavy and tank in tier 10. And I think it's down to the fact that it's too slow for the average player to kill themselves. And so while I do want to rank it in like the bleh category, I'll put it into like the average. I think that the mouse is pretty average. There's not much you can do in the vehicle to really carry a late game situation if you're up against a decent medium, but at the same time, it can have some pretty influential games early game. It's the same problem with the YAG. It's too slow and too large to really make an impact. So yeah, it's going to go into average. It's definitely better than like the Waffentiger and 116 F3, but not a whole lot better. I'll tell you that. VK72, strong. It's definitely down from when it used to be in like OP to super strong, but it's still a capable tank. It has a really good gun with 600 alpha and tungsten. It has decent mobility. It has improved suspension, which is very nice in terms of its power to weight ratio and everything. It's got 7 degrees of gun depression. It's kind of like an E100, but you trade hull armor for turret armor, which is really nice, and I like that. It's definitely nothing incredible, but it's a fun tank. And if you want a super heavy to play, it's a good one. Just right now, super heavies are in the weakest state they've ever been due to the way Wargaming has balanced autoloaders and mediums alike, and tank destroyers at that as well. So, kind of the best way to describe it. The VK90, you know, somebody described the VK90 perfectly in my comments when I made a video on it the other day. They said the VK90 has two things. It's either it does great or it does terrible. There's no in between. And I agree with that. The VK90 sometimes has an incredibly amazing hold, and then other games you just get bullied. And it's kind of funny. But yeah, the VK90, it's always going to be super strong. It's definitely the best super heavy in tier 10. It has great turret armor, which I struggle to pen all the time due to the way it's so goofy to shoot at. The hatch is really troll, lower plate is super troll, and the side armor is super strong. Not only that, the vehicle has 300 millimeters of AP pen, which is insane. The vehicle has really good accuracy due to the combat stabilization. There you go, combat stabilization. So it's all good there. It's got solid mobility for a super heavy as well. It's one of the faster super heavies. In general, the VK90 is really the best super heavy in tier 10. It really defeats the purpose of a mouse, and that's why it goes from average to super strong. Ho-Re. Yeah, Ho-Re's just going to go into the OP category, guys. It really is. I mean, the vehicle feature is one of the dumbest guns in tier 10. It has 560 damage per shot, and loading gold only brings you down to 545, losing 15 damage per shot. And with that, you have basically 400 millimeters of effective penetration, which is ridiculous. Not only that, the Ho-Re has good mobility. It has, for some reason, sandbags and reactive armor, allowing it to get bounces, and Wargaming buffed its DPM recently, allowing it to have around 3,500-ish DPM. Yeah, the Ho-Re is kind of a stupid tank. It's one of those vehicles that I hate going up against because it never misses, and half the time it gets some weird wonky bounce on its upper plate just because of your RNG. It's a cringe tank to go up against, I can tell you that for a fact. I think if Wargaming wanted to balance the Ho-Re out, what they should do is they should nerf its mobility. I think that would really balance it. If they nerfed its mobility to a point where it wasn't very fast, kind of that similar levels to like maybe a Foch, it wouldn't be nearly as capable, but right now, it's just so good at everything that it's such a dangerous tank. The STB-1, it's down but not out. And because of that, it's still going to go in the super strong. When you have a vehicle with 11 degrees of gun depression and 330 damage per shot with good levels of premium pen, solid mobility, and still really good turret armor, it's always going to be great. I mean, I would challenge any solid player to go up against an STB on a ridgeline, and you're still going to struggle against it. I mean, sure, it's only got 2,900 DPM, but that's still plenty of damage per minute. And when you load gold, you don't lose really any DPM. Take a, I don't know, a 121B, for example, right? The 121B's got like 3,300, 3,400 DPM, but loading premium ammo, you go from that 3,300 DPM to like 29, 2,800. In this tank, you go from 2,900 to 2,900. So in the STB, you actually don't lose anything loading gold, meaning that in certain circumstances, you still have the same, if not better, effective damage per minute than other tier 10 mediums. It's a really dangerous tank, and definitely one that I fear when I go up against, but I'm glad that Wargaming did nerf it. It's not like a ridiculously OP tank anymore. Type 71, on the other hand, yeah, OP. The 362 millimeters of premium pen on the Type 71 is insanely overpowered, especially when you pair it with the fact the vehicle has solid mobility, great armor, and you can use 9 degrees of gun depression on it, which is what I'm currently running. It allows it to work ridge lines incredibly well, bullying basically anything in your way. The Type 71 is really one of the most dangerous tier 10 heavies, and it's the third heavy to make it. Oh no, the fourth heavy actually to make it into the OP category. Although, I don't know if we really count the AMX in the heavy category. But yeah, Type 71 is incredibly dangerous, incredibly strong, and a vehicle that I definitely fear when I go up against. Because even if it's not a great player, the fact that you can just load gold and butter through 99% of armor up against you is a little ridiculous. It's an insane tank. The armor as well in the Type 71 is just so good, bro. It's so good. Chieftain Mark 6, well, it's got 400 damage per shot, 460 with the Hesh, and 220 mils a pen with the high explosive. Also, I need to itch my nose really quickly. It's really itchy, like, right here. So let me just do that. There you go. Ah, every now and then, gotta wipe your nose, right? And after doing 40 minutes of recording so far, well, yeah. So, the, what was I ranking? Oh, Chieftain, yeah. Chieftain has tungsten, 3k DPM, hash with good pen and alpha, and great mobility now due to the gear oil. Definitely super strong. I mean, it's an incredible tank. It did get slight nerfs. It no longer has premium ammo. Its accuracy also got a little bit worse, but everything else about the Chieftain is flat better, and it allows the vehicle to kind of get away with whatever it wants. It's so good. It really is. I love the Chieftain. Sold out like crazy in the Blitz Fair auctions, and it makes sense. It's just such a fun tier 10. Oof, FV2 and 5B 183. Definitely not super strong or OP, but I'm going to put it into the strong category. The 183 used to be like one of the worst tier 10s in my eyes. It was always unworkable to trash, but now the 183, now that Wargaming has buffed its camo, now that accuracy keeps getting buffed on the tank, its alpha got buffed. Yeah, the 183 definitely makes it into strong. It's a little insane. I remember when I criticized Meadsy for putting the 183 into the... Well, I still don't think the 183 is a good beginner tank. I should clarify that now. But I remember when I criticized him very harshly for putting it into the top, like, 5 tanks for a beginner to grind. And unironically, now it's not even that bad for a beginner because it does have the camo and the accuracy. It's a little insane. I mean, yeah, I hate going up against 183s. It's definitely still my most hated tank to go up against, but... yeah, that's kind of how the 183 works nowadays. I don't need to explain much about it. I think you guys know everything about the 183 at this point. Okay, FE2 and 5B. I'm going to put it in the super strong. It is a super strong tank. It's definitely on the same level as the Chieftain. While I do sometimes criticize the 2 and 5B on stream, it's just as a joke. The 2 and 5B itself is a great tank. It has great levels of DPM. It has super strong turret armor, especially after the enhanced graphics. The turret is even harder to penetrate. And when you pair all of that with great mobility, solid DPM, and some of the best accuracy in tier 10, plus 183 millimeters of high explosive pen, the 2 and 5B really is a super dangerous tank. The major problem is that it's rear turreted, and it has like absolutely no armor, which is not a great combination. Definitely a strong vehicle, but not one I would recommend for the beginner or the light of hearted to drive. So that's really the best way to describe the FE2 and 5B. But yeah, fantastic. And for a skilled player, it's really good. The FV2 and 7 Badger, I'm going to put into the strong category. It's definitely not super strong anymore. I mean, it does feature like DPM and everything, but the problem with the FV2 and 7 Badger is just the fact that its traverse speed is tragic, like terrible. And I've had many situations where I'm on a ridgeline and then somebody just rolls off to my side and I'm like, like that's the equivalent of driving a Badger. So it's definitely, like, still strong. It can do a good job, but once you run into, like, a situation where you're not comfortable, it just falls apart immediately. And, yeah, that's the Badger for you. But I definitely think it's still, like, a strong vehicle. It's not bad, and strong is a good category. It's just unfortunate that it's not, you know, anything super strong anymore. The 4005, oof, this is a tricky one. The 4005 features 3,400 DPM, a 1,640 damage clip, great mobility, solid... camo values. In general, it's a flat better Waffenträger F1. Tricky one. I don't want to put it into OP. I do think that it kind of is OP, but at the same time, I don't want to put it there. I'm going to put it into strong. I think that's where we're going to put it. It's definitely a strong tank. At the end of the day, while it may have nuking potentials, at the same time, it is a very easy tank to counter. It has no armor. Its mobility may be good, but its reverse speed is absolutely terrible. And its accuracy can be a bit derpy at times. I still think something like a T57 Heavy or a 50B are going to be better options. So, yeah, it's a strong tank, don't get me wrong. But, yeah, strong is a pretty good category for, I think, to put in the 4005. The 4202 has two different guns. You have the Royal Ordnance and the 105mm L7B. The L7B is the HESH firing gun. The Royal Ordnance is the heat firing gun. The heat firing gun goes into average. I'm not really sure why you would drive it. And the HESH firing gun goes into strong right now. The problem with the 4202 is not that the tank itself struggles, it's more the fact that, just like every other medium has been so mega buffed, that the 4202 struggles to go up against them, super well. But I still love the 4202. The HESH capabilities are fantastic, the mobility of the tank is great, the DPM is really good as well. In general, the 4202 is still a very, very capable tier 10, and one that I would definitely say is quite strong in a good player's hands, which is why it's in the strong category. I think it's a really good tank, but it's never a vehicle I'm necessarily scared of going up against, if that also makes sense. The Super Conqueror is a tier 10 British super heavy, and boop, there you go. Super Conq is definitely an OP tank. It's mobile for what it is. It's actually quite mobile. It goes like 36, 34 kilometers per hour. It has 10 degrees of gun depression. Great DPM. Its accuracy is quite good if you're running refined gun. The vehicle has stupid good hull armor and turret armor. And oh yeah, it has reactive for some reason. If it didn't have reactive, it'd probably be in super strong. But the fact that the vehicle has everything and then also has reactive is just mind-boggling. It is an insanely strong vehicle, and it is a tank that I fear going up against on the battlefield. Even if it's not a great player, it's such a strong vehicle. And, if I'm in something like a BZ75 or 114 SP2, a Kranvagn K, VK72, even if that player's not great, it's still such a dangerous tank if they just pop reactive and start spamming you with gold. It's such a scary tank to go up against. The Vickers Light is, the second light tank now? Yeah, we haven't broken into too many light tanks, but the Vickers is a very, very fun light tank. It's mobile, it's got great levels of DPM, and overall, definitely a strong tank. I wouldn't say it's anything better because it doesn't have gold, and it's got very low alpha damage. I think in a good player's hands, it can definitely be in super strong, but at the end of the day, the Vickers Light, it's just not the best light tank, especially when you look at vehicles like the Sheridan T100LT, Balchation, and WZ-132-1. And I think the Vickers Light, though, is very balanced, which I like. It's so disappointing to me that, strong to me feels like mediocre, but, when you have super strong and OP and there's so many tanks up here, the Vickers Light itself just doesn't feel like anything incredible compared to the rest. But it is still a very fun tank, and I think in a good player's hands it does very well. I enjoy it, so yeah, I mean, it's got 300 damage, 350 on the high explosive squash head, which is very nice. Its mobility is solid, and it has the most armor out of all the light tanks, but still, with the fact that you don't have gold pen and the fact that your alpha is so low on standard means that basically any medium can very easily deal with you at whim, which I actually think it's good. I think that light tanks should be very vulnerable to mediums, but that's my personal opinion. The Concept 1B, yeah, OP. I mean, you can't pen it. What do you do against it on a ridgeline, bruh? It's got mobility. It has a reserve track mechanic, meaning that even if it gets tracked, it can still reverse. It has 3,000 DPM, crazy good accuracy. Now that calibrated shells got buffed, it buffed the heat pen, and it didn't affect the Concept at all because its turret armor is still nearly impossible for anything to pen. The Concept is 10 degrees of gun depression. It's got great mobility. It's actually 45 kilometer per hour top speed with the same power to weight as an E6. I mean, the thing is insane. It really is. The Concept 1B is an entirely overpowered tank in a decent player's hands. While it may not carry every game, I still think that it's just such a strong vehicle. The M6 Yo has two different gun options. We have the 120 and the 105. The 105 goes super strong because of the high level of DPM, the great level of accuracy, penetration, and overall capabilities. The 120mm goes into the OP category, and the reason why is because the vehicle features 450 damage per shot with a 1.71 second interclip. That is insane. The FV4005 183 does 950 damage in basically 0 seconds. But if you add in the aiming time, you're at least aiming for 3 seconds on average in the 183 before you shoot, unless you're a 20%er. The M6 Yo has reticle calibration. It takes you 2 seconds of aiming, and then you go bam, bam, and that's 900 damage. The fact that you have the same damage as a 183 on a heavy with 10 degrees of gun depression, solid mobility, and even decent DPM at around 2,500, yeah, I think the 120mm on the M6 Yo is insane. Sure, I know people all the time try to argue that the DPM is better, and maybe it is for you, but for me, the fact that you can shoot 2 shells back into cover, reload without bleeding any health, and do it again is what allows the M6 Yo to be such an overpowered tank. So that's why I have it in the OP category. The M48 Patton Chieftain. Oh boy, you know what, guys? We have another tank in the OP category. What's crazy to me is that the OP category is almost as large as the super strong. And while you may be saying, no, again, if you drive any of these tanks here, you will do better than any of these other vehicles, guaranteed. And that's why it's in the OP category. These tanks are not average. Just because they're really good does not make them average. As I mentioned, like if you wanted me to do the tier list the way you know, some people would like it, then it would be something like this would be strong. Or, you know, maybe this would be strong in your eyes, right? This would be good, average, and then like workable and bad. But I just think that these tanks really are OP in the current meta. But that's how I see it. Again, everybody's feeling free to disagree. Even if you don't fully agree with my rankings, you can just, you know, change them yourself to a little bit less strong. But these are still the best tanks in tier 10 here. All right, M60. M60 goes into strong. It's definitely not nearly as good as the M48 patent. The turret armor on the M60 is rather mediocre. For some reason, it has enhanced sandbags, which, like, who cares? In general, it's all right. It's definitely not a bad tank, but I think that there are better options, especially the vehicles in Super Strong. I just think that the M60, it's kind of a worse patent. And especially judging that you have to spend money to get the M60, and it doesn't even earn credits. Yeah, it's a bit of a disappointing tank, to be honest. The T10's strong. Definitely not super strong, but strong. It has great gun depression, 8 degrees. It has super speed boost, allowing it to at least get a little bit in the position. And with the high alpha of 680, paired with the really good levels of penetration and decent DPM, it allows the E3 to be quite the capable tier 10. It's very dangerous to use in the battlefield, and definitely a tank that I would say to be wary of when you go up against it. You guys can let me know what you think about the E3 in the comments, but it's a strong tank. It is definitely a strong tank. It's just nothing better. It's kind of like the Badger. It's limited by its mobility. You can only do so much of an impact once you go up against a light tank, and that's where you run into problems. The E4, on the other hand, well, that one's definitely super strong. The E4 features mobility, DPM, high alpha, and really good armor. It really is kind of the jack of all trades when it comes to the heavily armored TDs. I mean, it's got a turret for Pete's sake, and that alone is what allows the E4 to be so good. It's got that turret, it's got that mobility, and it has 2200 health, making it one of the highest hit point tank destroyers in tier 10. The E4 really is a beast. It really is an enjoyable tier 10. I love playing it, and it just has really no downsides. I mean, sure, you can argue the accuracy, but now that Refined Gun is so good, just slap Refined Gun on it. Your accuracy is going to be more than fine. We have the T10's E5, definitely super strong. The E5 has basically everything. It's got 0.3 dispersion, which is crazy good. It has solid DPM, incredible levels of turret armor, and a good top speed. The only reason the E5 is not in like the OP category is mainly because of the fact that its DPM is actually a little bit on the average side now for heavies. It's got like 2600 with Cali, which is basically the same as an AMX M4 and the rest of tier 10. And if I'm putting the AMX M4 in super strong, then the E5 is also going in the super strong. But it's a really good tank. The level of accuracy, the level of mobility, and turret armor all paired together with solid DPM and crazy good heat pen allow the E5 to be one of the most dominant tier 10 heavies on a ridgeline. The only problem that it still has is poor track wheels and very terrible reverse speed, which aren't a great combination when you put them into your mind, but still a very, very good tank. The T57 Heavy, oof, I don't know where I want to put the 57. I'm going to put it in super strong. The 57 Heavy has shell reload boost, which means that you can deal all of your 1200 potential damage in like 3.5 seconds, which is crazy. Not only that, it has super troll armor. The way the turret's designed to get some really goofy bounces. The track wheels are very, very troll for some reason, way more troll than the E5s, and it has pretty good mobility. It's honestly a very dangerous tank. I also think the 57 Heavy reverse is at 14 now instead of the E12, which is surprising. Maybe it's 12 now. I know that it got buffed by 2. Point being, the 57 Heavy is very scary, and in a average player's hands, it's still a tank that scares me. I mean, if that thing rolls around a corner and you're on reload, or even if you're not on reload, it can literally have a tier 10. The average tier 10 Heavy has 2400 health, and the 57 Heavy does 2200, so literally, the 57 Heavy can take away half your health and back in the cover like nothing even happened. It's a little crazy. Okay, well, this one, not even a doubt in my mind, goes into the OP category. The E6 was always, like, strong, very strong, but Wargaming decided to change its graphics, which I'm all for. I think all tanks should have enhanced graphics. The problem is they grabbed the World of Tanks PC model, and the World of Tanks PC model has a stronger angling on the hatch. And because of that, the hatch of the E6 went from like 240 millimeters effective to now 280, meaning that most tier 10s cannot pen it with standard ammo. And even with gold, because of how troll that hatch is, you're really going to struggle to cut through it. Unironically, I think the E6 is now really the strongest. Like, if you were to rank these in terms of OP, I would put like the E6 up here. Like, that's how good it is. It's insane. It's a tank that I hate fighting. I absolutely hate going up against it, even if it's not that skilled of a player. The level of DPM, the level of mobility, and heat penetration paired with everything else and the troll armor makes it, even as a skilled player, very hard to deal with. If it's exposed, it's not that hard to deal with, but yeah, the E6 is just so incredibly cringe. It really is. Sheridan missile, not really going to talk about that tank. The Sheridan is obviously quite the capable vehicle. Once again, it's going in the OP. It really is. I mean, 570 damage per shot now because it got buffed. It has mobility. It has armor that you cannot high explosive pen anywhere. And it's also incredibly trolled due to the side armor getting random ass bounces. Not only that, the Sheridan has 350 millimeters of heat pen for some weird reason. I still can't wrap my head around that. It should have like 330 or 320 at best. The accuracy is very good, especially for running refined gun. It is stupid, and it also has really good view range and camo. The Sheridan defeats the purpose of most tank destroyers, if you ask me. Like, why even bother driving a tank destroyer when you can drive a Sheridan, have 2600 DPM, way more mobility, way more view range, a turret with 10 degrees of gun depression, and armor that you can't even really high explosive pen? It's confusing to me, it really is. I mean, look at a grill, and then compare its capabilities to a Sheridan. Sure, the grill may have more DPM, but that's it. It doesn't really have any other advantage. You could say accuracy, but you're also sitting at the back of a map with a grill, and I'm sitting frontline with a Sheridan, so yeah, it kind of evens out. Either way, Sheridan's kind of stupid, if you ask me. XM66F, I'm actually going to put it in the super strong. I don't think it's entirely OP. The main reason why is because A, the mantlet is very easy to cut through with gold rounds, and B, it's quite a troll tank in terms of its accuracy. The XM66F is a very strong tank, but it's not one I ever run up against, and even if I do, I just don't really struggle to fight it. Because you can cut through the mantlet with around 330 mils of pen and more, it's really only a hard tank to deal with mediums, and yeah, while it is a very, very strong tank to fight against mediums with, I don't like the APCR standard. I think that's incredibly cringe. I don't know why they gave it APCR standard, and it's just not that hard of a tank for me to fight. But I think at the same time, in a good player's hands, it is very, very dangerous. The level of DPM, the level of accuracy, and everything else makes it super scary. But I definitely think it's on par with these other vehicles in the super strong category. IS-4. Average, honestly. It's average. After messing around with it and getting an idea of how it plays and everything, it's not bad, but like, I don't know. I don't really think there's anything too particularly amazing about the IS-4. The buffs definitely have pushed it up a notch, but I just don't really see much of a reason to drive it right now. I really don't. Yeah, average. It's an average tank, right? Like, it's got DPM, it's got pen, but it also doesn't have much gun depression. It still doesn't have great hull armor. I just don't really see much of a reason to drive it. The IS-7, definitely super strong. It's got mobility, it's got tungsten, it's got really solid armor, it's got super strong turret armor as well. It's just a great tank in 99% of situations you're driving in. The side armor, I was driving my Waffenträger Alpha 100 the other day and bounced, I think, all 3 shells on the flat side of an IS-7, and he was like 20 feet in front of me. It's stupid what the tank gets away with. It is not a fun tank to fight against if you are getting trolled, but at the same time, I'm glad they nerfed its lower plate. I think it's a very solid, super strong tank. Object 140, average. Definitely an average tank. The DPM is great, the mobility is great, and the camo values are fantastic. Unfortunately, the turret armor is incredibly poor, and the DPM, while it is strong, I'm not sure why Wargaming decided to nerf its DPM from what it originally was. The DPM used to be a lot higher, and then they said, nah, we're going to nerf it. The 140 is the tank that should have Leopard 1 values. Instead, the Leopard is the one that has Leopard 1 values. It's weird. But yeah, the 140, it's alright. It's not a bad tank, but it's definitely not a tank you're going to catch me driving all too much. The Object 260 also goes into workable, or not workable, average. I mean, It's an average tank. There's really nothing too special about it. Its DPM is good, but like the armor is so mediocre, the penetration sucks, and it's got APCR standard. It's just not that fun of a tank to drive, really. I think the IS-4 is definitely better than the Object 260, but not a whole lot better. I think they're both on par. So, yeah. Object 263, super strong. Definitely super strong. The level of mobility, DPM, and honestly, armor is kind of crazy on the 263, and I'd put it on par with the XM66F. It really is an incredibly dangerous vehicle. In a decent player's hands, the 263 is a scary, scary tank to roll up against. However, you don't really see decent people using it, so it's never that much of a threat. The Object 268 version 4, strong. It's no longer super strong or OP, and the reason why is because calibrated shells kind of nerf that thing a big amount. Enhanced armor and calibrated shells knock the vehicle down a peg. And not only that, the gun is very inaccurate. Its mobility, while decent, is nothing crazy. Its turret, or it's not turret, but its superstructure is very easy to deal with if you know what you're doing. It's definitely like a capable vehicle, don't get me wrong, but it's also one that can be very easily overwhelmed if you know what you're doing. The high alpha 650 is great though, and the armor is still effective against opponents if you're, against mediums or something like that. It's still not bad. It's just unfortunate that it doesn't really have that oomph anymore. I think the turret, or again, the superstructure should get about a 20mm buff, and the lower plate should maybe get a 10mm nerf, and that would allow the vehicle to feel a little stronger in certain circumstances and a little weaker in others. The 777, definitely super strong. It's got 3000 DPM, it's got 430 alpha, it has a top speed of 45 kilometers per hour, while its reverse speed may only be 12. Everything else is great. It has solid turret armor and super good side scraping capabilities. The only real problem with the 777 is its ammo rack. But while that is a problem, it's not one that you normally run into an issue with. It's just occasionally you're going to get a damaged ammo rack and maybe full health. But in other regards, it's really good. It's got everything going for it. It's basically a 113 with better armor, but a worse gun. That's the best way to describe it. Object 268. Definitely super strong. The 268 features 690 damage per shot, 50 km per hour top speed, 7 degrees of gun depression, the best camo values in tier 10, and it's got like super troll armor. The 268 is crazy good, and its accuracy is really good as well. For basically 700 damage per shot, the 268 has way too good accuracy. I definitely think it should have stayed at like 640 alpha, because now it's just such a good vehicle. It's definitely not OP. Like, I don't struggle going up against it, but man, that thing chunks your health off when it hits you. It is a very, very dangerous tank. The Object 907, also super strong. The level of DPM, the tracer shell mechanic alone is kind of OP. And when you pair all of that with the mobility, the DPM, and the rather troll turret armor the vehicle features, the 907 in a decent player's hands is a very cringe tank to roll up against, and I definitely think one of the stronger tier 10 mediums. T100 LT, also gonna be super strong. The level of DPM the T100 features, the level of mobility, the tracer shell mechanic, and all the capabilities the T100 has is super, super fun, and it allows the vehicle to just kind of rip into its opponents. It's kind of just a 907 turned into a light tank, and it has basically the same capabilities. So because of that, it's on the same level as the 907. It's just a little bit faster and a little bit more of a beetle bugler. T22 medium, super strong. Not OP, but definitely super strong. The level of armor it features allows it to get some crazy good bounces, especially because it got buffed in the latest update. The level of DPM is crazy good. Its mobility is fantastic, and it features tungsten for some reason. T22 is a beast. It really is. It is a super scary medium to go up against. It's like, if I were to rank it like all the way up here, also I'd put the 5A down here, but like, it's really scary. It's so hard to go up against a T22. I really like it. I think it's a fantastic medium, especially with the armor buffs. And then we have the 62A, which is average. 62A, unfortunately, just doesn't have much going for it anymore. Its armor is decent, but the DPM and accuracy are on the lower end, which definitely take away some of its capabilities. You can let me know in the comments what you guys think about the 62A, but definitely, in my personal opinion, I am going to be putting it into the average category. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is my tier list and ranking of all the tier 10s in World of Tanks Blitz. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. Zoom zoom out a bit here so you can see the whole tier list. There you go. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. And at the end of the day, these are my opinions. So if you disagree, you can let me know. But these are how I feel about the tanks. When I go up against enemies, this is how I rank them in terms of difficulty to fight. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.